we know the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah were the ones that created Purim. What do we know about the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah? Who exactly were? It's very sketchy. All right, what do we know? We know that from they're mentioned, of course, in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah just says clearly, really only makes two statements about them. The first statement is that Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. He gave it to Yoshua. Moshe passed on to the Torah to Yoshua. Yoshua to the Skenim to the Nevi'im. But Nevi'im masol the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. The Nevi'im gave it to the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. And they said three things. You should be misun bedin. You should be deliberate in judgment. In other words, weigh everything very carefully. But mido talmidim harbe, have a lot of students. And I'll tell you what I think about this. V'yasa siyag Torah, and make a fence around the Torah. So the first thing we know is that they got the Torah from the Nevi'im. So they're the transitionary period of the Nevi'im. The next thing we know, the next thing that's mentioned about them, it's only one other statement. Shimon HaTzadik haya mashiri Keneset Hagadolah. Shimon HaTzadik was from the remnant, the end of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. So the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah starts with Ezra and Nehemiah, etc., and it ends with Shimon HaTzadik. And the Rambam brings down in his commentary to the Parashat Mishnah, and I think on the Yad Chazaka, he also mentions that it consisted of 120 members. But the question is, are they all together at once? Because if you look at it, the Shimon HaTzadik, according to many, met with Alexander the Great. He was the one that supposedly they wanted to Jewish people that didn't believe in the Torah Shabbal Peh. So they told Alexander, the Jews are plotting against you. And when Alexander the Great saw him, he said, this is the guy whose face I see when I go into battle. So Shimon HaTzadik, so let's take the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. So you had the beginning of the Persian Empire after the Babylonian Empire. So there was two waves of Jews leaving. The first wave, they left. Zerubbabel left with, I think it was the Kohen Gadol. So they came, in other words, they left to go to Eretz Yisrael. They claimed that the Persian Empire, they wanted people to settle. They wanted to give religious freedoms to people. So they left. They go to Eretz Yisrael. But the first wave were people that were assimilated, that had married Goyim. There were people that were Mamzerim, etc., mentioned in the Mishnah and Kedushin. And then the about 60, and now the Kuzari says that the reason why the Hashem did not create the same type of Beis Hamikdash by the second bias is most of the Jews remained in Bavel. They didn't heed the call to go back. They should have all gone back to Israel, but they didn't. They were complacent and happy in Bavel, so most of the Jews stayed. So 60 years later, Ezra went with Nehemiah, etc. So this is the beginnings of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Now, until that time, from the time of Ezra till Shimon HaTzadik, so if you say Shimon HaTzadik was the one that met with Alexander the Great, that's close to 150 years later. That's in the time of the Hashmonaim, all right, which is approximately 200 years from the first settlement, so 60 years later when Ezra came, at least like 140, 150 years. So that means Anshei Keneset Hagadolah is going over a period of 150 years. Now, if that's true, I said we could understand maybe why it's called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. It was a long, and that was a period over a long period of time. Hagadolah wasn't one court. It was a long period of courts that were passed down one to the other, and then the end of the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah would have been with Shimon HaTzadik, 150, 160 years later. The other thing is, too, the 120 who said they were all at once. There's other places said there were 80. We know Sanhedrin is really 72. Who said they were all at once? It could be over that period, if you add up everybody, so you have maybe 120. I don't know. And therefore be Gedolah because there were a greater number, because we attribute this large sum of number to Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Certainly, if they were there all together, it would be called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Now, The Gemara gives another reasons why it's called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. What I'm saying is, it could be a literal reason. It was a great court because it lasted over a great period of time, or it had a great number of people there. But the other simple explanation, without going into the Gemara, would be it was a great court, meaning the effect of the court. It was the greatest Sanhedrin because it affected Judaism more than any other Sanhedrin, because the other Sanhedrin, they might have passed a Shiloh here and there. The Anshei Keneset Hagadolah changed the entire face of Judaism. It was a transition from the time of the Beis HaMikdash, where people came to the Beis HaMikdash and saw Nisim Nigloim, they saw miracles that were, out in the open, to a time of Hester Panim where the people didn't see miracles. There was no longer a Beis HaMikdash for the people in Bavel, the people in Chutz La'aretz. The majority of the Jews are there. They have no contact with the Beis HaMikdash. So what did they do right away? Davening. They created all the tefillas, the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah. Because if they didn't have the tefillas, how would these people have any connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? The other thing is, Ezra made Kriyas Torah. Because if they don't learn, they're not going to have any connection either. They were amongst their own people, and they had the influence of Torah around them. They had the Beis HaMikdash and the influence of Torah. Now they don't have it. So this is a transitionary period from Nevi'im, where the word of Hashem was spread, to a period where there's very little connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, what do you have basically? You basically have a situation where they have to strengthen the Torah. That's why it says they should have Talmidim Harbe, is one of the things, because we have to create a situation of Torah learning, or they won't have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we have to make a Siyag LaTorah, because they are not faced with the Torah on a day-to-day basis like they were. They're not in the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. We have to worry about protecting them amongst the Goyim. So I said, and now the Gemara, I'll just tell it to you outside, in Yuma Samches Amud Beis, it says the reason why they're called Anshei Keneset Hagadolah is because Moshe Rabbeinu said in the davening, Akel Hagadolah Gibor V'Hanorah. It was changed later by Daniel and by, who was the other one that, Yirmiyahu. It was changed later because when they saw the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, they said, what kind of Kadosh Baruch was Nora, and etc. And when they saw that the Jews were put into slavery and taken away, so they took out those words that showed the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah returned it. They said, what's the awesomeness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That even among the Goyim, the Jews still exist. In other words, there's 70 nations of Goyim ready to pounce down and get rid of us, but you know what? We're still here. So that's why Hashem is Akel Hagadolah, that it's awesome and great, because the Jewish people still exist as a testament to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness. So I said this could be the pshat also. What Esther was tying with the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah was, she said, look, you've added the fast days. The fast days are really showing that we are a people that's downtrodden and have been destroyed. So in Chutz La'aretz, there's going to be a despondency. The people are going to feel like Hashem has left them. We have nothing. What do we have? We have fast days. That's what we've added. We've added terrible calamities. All we have are calamities, and now we're among the Goyim where we have even more calamities. But Purim basically shows what? That even in Chutz La'aretz, if one prays and one has a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we are saved. So what Esther says is, if you're going to add the tzomos and the zakos and the screaming and the crying and the bad things, then you should certainly temper it with adding the good things. We should keep this the same way we kept that. If what you want is the people to have a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so she told them, the Anshei Keneset Hagadolah if you want to make the people have a connection with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you can't just put in those bad things. Just like you gave them Tisha B'Av, etc., give them also Purim and let them see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu works even in Chutz La'aretz with Nisim and etc. And that's how I would interpret the pasuk of Divrei Hatzomos. In other words, that it's going back to Tisha B'Av. It was more of an argument that just like you added that, add this. It was an argument that if you've added that, you should balance it by adding Purim to it as